Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 5th episode of the story where there are so many things that we as humans are unaware of, or lack an understanding. The bijou are one of those things. Follow the journey of Naruto Uzumaki as he befriends the yokai that was sealed inside of him and she helps him grow stronger. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. It took 2 days of running across both water and through woodlands before Naruto found his way back to the port town where he had first entered Kiri. It didn't look all that much different from when he had come into the country. Still, it was looking a little better. He could see places where ninja and civilians alike had set up food stands so that the people who were without homes or money could get some food, and the place just looked a little less bleak in general. As he made his way through the town, Naruto stopped at a small restaurant. It was nothing more than a little stand that reminded him of Ichiraku's back home, at least in looks. As he sat down in of the chairs, a man who looked to be in his mid-30s or so turned around from where he was looking. "What can I get for you, kid?" he asked. By now, Naruto had decided to discard his Erasure look, since he didn't want any attention and his red-haired persona had become very famous during the war. "I'll have some udon noodles with a side of fried calamari," said Naruto after looking over the menu for a moment. "Comin' right up," the man said as he took the menu and set it inside a rack that held even more menus. "Narakan," Akane said, bringing a smile to his face as she used the new nickname she had given to him. Hearing her voice brought the last few days of travel back to him. After her initial threat of torture and consequent confession of love, the two of them had been exploring their relationship every night when Naruto went to bed. The blonde could honestly say that he had never been as happy as he was now. They never went beyond kissing and cuddling, but he didn't have any desire for sex yet, aside from the fact that she was in his mind, and despite his mental image being 15, he still had a 10-year-old body, thus, some parts of his anatomy still didn't quite work yet, even in the mindscape. "Yes, Beneheim?" asked Naruto, using the pet name he had come up with for her. The man who had taken his order set down a steaming hot plate of udon noodles served in a dashi broth with a variety of vegetable toppings and 2 boiled eggs, along with a side of fried calamari with a side of some kind of dipping sauce. Naruto thanked the man before focusing on the red head sealed inside of him. Akane smiled within the seal. "I was just thinking, since we're in Mizu no Kuni, and no longer have any pressing concerns, that you may want to visit your mother's homeland." Naruto paused just as he finished breaking his chopsticks for a second. The action was so fast that unless you knew Naruto as well as Akane did, you would have never even noticed something was wrong. "My mother's homeland is near here," he asked, even as he whispered a quick "itadakimasu" and began to slowly eat. "It's a little ways away," Akane said. Yuzu no Kuni was an island that didn't become a part of Mizu no Kuni due to the fact that it was much farther out than any of the other islands. "From what I remember of my geology, it takes about 2 weeks to get close to it and it can't be accessed by boat." Naruto frowned as he popped a fish cake into his mouth and chewed. "Why is that?" "Because of the whirlpools. Yuzu no Kuni is an island that is completely surrounded by whirlpools. That's why your clan came up with the name Uzumaki. The whirlpools were actually one of the Uzumaki clan's defensive measures. I remember hearing about how they could actually control the whirlpool's potency to become as gentle as a small funnel, to as violent as a raging maelstrom." "I see." A thoughtful look crossed the blonde's face as he thought about the benefits of taking this side trip to his mother's ancestral home. He had always wanted to learn more about his mother. It was the one piece of his past that was still somewhat clouded in mystery. Akane had done what she could to fill in the blanks, but she didn't know everything there was to know about the woman named Kushina Uzumaki. Her past was one of those things. "Do you think we have the time?" asked Naruto. "We've been gone for 8 months, I don't know how much longer my Chishio Bunshin will last." "We told it to conserve its chakra," Akane said. "It should last until the end of the year, we'll be back at least a month before then." Her voice went from a matter-of-fact tone to the softer one she often used with him. "I know you want to know more about your mom, Naruto-kun. This may be your best chance." "You're right," he decided, "it likely is my best chance, maybe my only one." But how would we get there? Even if you know where it is, I can't walk that far on water, even I would run out of chakra before then. We'll hire a ferryman, Akane said. May gave you quite a bit of money as compensation for your efforts. You should have more than enough with you to pay for passage. Hearing the way Akane spat out the name of the auburn-haired woman, like it was diseased, made Naruto frown. Hey, you know that there's nothing going on between me and May, right? Just because she gave me that one kiss, doesn't mean I'm going to jump her bones. You're the one I love. It had taken some particularly thorough interrogation techniques to get Akane to reveal the reason she had been so upset earlier. But now that he knew the reason, Naruto would do everything in his power to let her know nothing would happen between him and any woman that was not her. Akane smiled within the seal, even as a slight blush of embarrassment came to her face. I know, I guess I just still don't like that she stole your first kiss from me. Well, if it's any consolation, you're a much better kisser than she is, Naruto replied cheekily, pleased to know he could finally get back at the woman who had been teasing him mercilessly since he was 8. You know that's not the only thing I'm probably better at than her, Akane said, modulating her voice to that tone that never failed to send shivers down Naruto's spine. Maybe the next time you come into the seal, I can show you some of those other talents that I have. Damn, Naruto swore as he realized that he still couldn't get Akane back without her turning it around on him. Inside of the seal, said Demonis, grinned and gave a victory sign. After his meal, Naruto set the allotted amount of money for the food on the table and left. He made his way to the docks, drawing a few curious stares on his way. Blonde hair was rare in every nation except Kumogakure, and his version of sun-kissed golden blonde was an oddity even there. So seeing a kid wearing black shinobi clothing with a sword attached to his back and bright blonde hair was likely a very unusual sight for the mostly dark brown-haired people of Kiri. When he got to the docks, it was to see only a few ships were still around. May had sent out word to many of the traders and shipping companies that business was open again and that they should begin setting sail and trying to market trade with other countries as soon as possible. After having most of their imports cut off due to Yagura barring most trade, the sailors were quick to set sail and begin working once more. That didn't mean that everyone had left. Naruto saw a man with black hair, a scraggly beard and an eye patch. Naruto walked up to him and immediately got the man's attention. What do you want, kid? I'm a little busy right now. I was hoping that you could grant me passage to Yuzu no Kuni, Naruto said, making the man halt in his tracks to look at him incredulously. I'm willing to pay a hefty sum if you can. No one goes to that place these days, kid, the man said. There ain't anything there, and even if they did go, there's no way to get past the whirlpools. In the past decade since the destruction of the Uzumaki clan, Yuzu no Kuni had become a death trap for ships. The whirlpools would often pull anything into them and destroy any ship that came too close, along with their cargo. Without the Uzumaki clan to control them, the whirlpools had simply gone out of control. You don't have to take me all the way, Naruto reassured, I just need someone to get me at least a mile out of the surrounding whirlpools. And as I said, I'm willing to pay a hefty sum of money. The man gave him a speculative look. How much are we talking? 15,000 yen, Naruto's answer caused the older man's eyebrows to raise into his hairline. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. It took a total of 3 weeks to actually get to Yuzu no Kuni. Surprisingly enough, the small island nation was actually only several dozen miles outside of Hai no Kuni, which was where the ship Naruto had bartered passage on was going anyways. After disembarking from the ship and surprising all those on board by walking on the water, the only problem Naruto had getting onto the island of his ancestors was the large whirlpools that surrounded and guarded the island. That problem, however, had been easily solved by clone hopping, jumping into the air and creating a clone to jump off of, then another and another until Naruto had gone past the whirlpool. Once he got on land, Naruto began to journey into the island until he finally came across Uzushiogakure no Sato. It's not quite what I expected, Akane said as Naruto stood in front of the ninja village of the Uzumaki clan. In terms of appearance, the village seemed to have been composed of several cylindrical buildings, similar to those of Kirigakure. A wide river seemed to cut through the village and was gapped by large bridges. The surrounding countryside was dominated by steep hills. Of course, all of that was only what Naruto had been able to piece together from what he could see. The entire village was actually ruins, the buildings were gutted or burnt down completely, the bridges were destroyed, and several sections of Uzushio were simply gone, not even debris was left from the aftermath of whatever had destroyed those buildings. What buildings were left of the once great village had vines and other plant life beginning to reclaim it. I don't know if we'll actually find anything, Naruto said, frowning at the thought. Nevertheless he journeyed into the village and began to look around, hoping against hope that something had survived the destruction of his mother's homeland. The next couple of hours were spent searching the ruins of the village, looking for anything that might tell Naruto a little more about the people who once inhabited the now abandoned streets. He spent much of his time going through ruined-out buildings, hoping to find maybe some kind of secret passage that would lead to a library or even just a few scrolls or a journal. What Naruto found instead were the many signs of battle that spread across the landscape, old rusted kunai, broken swords, and an assortment of other weapons. It was clear that when the Kumo, Iwa alliance had left after destroying the village, they had not taken their dead with them. While there were not many skeletons due to time having decayed most of them, or the plants having consumed and crushed the bones in their attempt to gain a foothold in the village, there were still more than enough to show that a lot of deaths had taken place here. "There's not much here, is there?" asked Akane with a heavy sigh. "No, but we both knew there was a distinct possibility that this is what we would find." Naruto came out of another building and looked around, his eyes landed on the largest building there. It was obviously the Kage building. Aside from the fact that it was the largest in the entire village, it was also the one that was the most heavily damaged. As he entered the building he saw what looked like a lobby, there was the ruined remains of a front desk next to a staircase. The entire left wall had been burnt down, rubble strewn about showing it had been hit by some errant jutsu or even done on purpose. There were several holes dotting the floor and Naruto realized there must be some kind of staircase leading down. "Do you think we'll find something?" asked Akane as Naruto made his way further in. He soon found a door that had been burnt down, leading to a staircase that led deeper into the building. "I can only hope that we do," Naruto replied as he made his way down. He went down several flights of stairs before finding himself in what looked like a catacomb. Walking down the narrow passage, the whiskered blonde was surprised that he didn't need to light any kind of torch, thanks to the weird fungal formations that lined the walls and glowed a light blue. Looking around, a frown crossed the whiskered blonde's face as he saw a lot of skeletons lying along the wall with what looked like bamboo shafts impaling them. As Naruto continued moving forward, his left foot sunk when he landed on a loose tile. There was a light clicking noise and then he heard a loud whoosh. Suddenly several of said same bamboo shafts shot out from nearly a dozen holes in the wall, all of them flying towards him. Gritting his teeth, Naruto pushed chakra into his legs and began running. His body, honed and conditioned since he was 5 thanks to Akane, found himself testing the limits of his reflexes and dodging ability as the shafts rained towards him from the walls, the ceiling. A few times he even found himself having to react in a split second to dodge spears that shot up from the floor. It was just as he was dodging another set of spears that had shot out, jumping and rotating his body to let the shafts pass him by mere centimeters, that he landed on the ground and was forced to make a quick leap up as the floor gave out. He ran along ceiling now, and continued dodging until he reached the end of the corridor, after which he pushed himself off the ceiling, flipping and spinning until he landed on solid ground. He wiped the sweat from his brow as he looked back to where he had come from. "I guess a lot of the traps are still active." The Uzumaki clan were one of the many bloodline clans who guarded their secrets zealously, Akane recited from one of the many scrolls his mother had that the two read. "If they're going through so much effort to protect what's down here, then it must be important." "Those are my thoughts as well," Naruto continued on his way. The area outside of the corridor was a labyrinth of twisting passages and dead ends, a few of which were caused from one of the many buildings' top side having collapsed on top of it. The blonde Uzumaki was forced to double back more times than he cared to count in an effort to get through the annoying maze. Along the way Naruto ran into several more traps, several pitfalls filled with spikes at the bottom, a few more holes that launched bamboo shafts at him. He even found himself having to run from a rather large boulder that only stopped chasing him because the blonde got tired and blew it up with one of his Uzumaki Kenjutsu techniques. After several hours of traps and havoc Naruto found himself staring at a large double door. It was unlike any he had ever seen, aside from the fact that the door was nearly as large as the gates that led into Konoha. It was obviously made of stone, a deep red stone that looked almost like blood. All along the door were chains, 6 chains that held the door closed, one in each corner and one on the left and right sides. Along the chains Naruto saw the black inking of a seal array, which was completed in the center where a large locking mechanism kept the chains together. "It's a blood seal," Akane said, surprising Naruto since she didn't know much about sealing as he did, and he hadn't recognized it. Sensing his confusion she went on to explain, "It's a very ancient blood seal, and was one of the first seals ever created. It came from the man who had you given humanity jutsu, the man known as the Rikudo Sennin." Naruto's eyes went wide as he heard that, so my clan was around back then. Did they have some kind of relation with the Rikudo Sennin? I don't know, Akane frowned, they definitely had to have been alive back then, but I don't think they were called Uzumaki at that time. Unfortunately, the Uzumaki name didn't appear until I was well entrenched as Hai no Kuni's guardian and I had only heard about them in passing. I never had time nor the desire after that to find out anything about their history. I see, the whiskered blonde looked at the locking mechanism for only a moment, bit his and swiped his hand across the seal. Well, I won't be getting any answers from just standing here. He stepped back and watched as the blood began to steam and hiss as it touched the sealing array. The part of the seal that the blood touched soon turned red, that red began to spread along to the seal until the entire locking mechanism had glowing red seals on it. Then it began to spread, moving out along the seals on the chains until they all reached the end. 8 bolts popped out of the sides of the locking mechanism after that and the frontmost top began to spin, until it tumbled to the ground in 2 pieces. The chains fell by the wayside as the door began to slowly creak open, moving inwards. Naruto walked through the door and stopped, staring at the room he was in shock. The room was essentially a large dome that spanned several hundred meters. All around the room acting as supports were large stone columns and archways. The earth seemed to have made its way down here as well. Nearly every column was covered from head to toe in vines, making it nearly impossible to see anything other than a few flecks of stone. The entire thing reminded Naruto of this one movie he watched once when he snuck into a movie theater about a treasure hunter who visited ancient temples in search of lost treasures. Walking through the room Naruto's head turned left and right as he looked around in an attempt to memorize the entire cavernous dome. He soon found himself standing in the center. Right in front of him was a large stone dais with 2 items on top of it. The first was a large scroll, much bigger than the usual sealing scrolls at nearly 4 times the size of one. It was a deep red color and had gold edging. The second was another, much smaller and plainer looking scroll. Both were old, they looked to be slightly worn around the edges and had probably been sitting there since Uzushio was destroyed. Naruto walked up to the dais when he heard Akane give a sharp intake of breath. Is something wrong? Naruto-kun, that large scroll is a summoning contract, she breathed out. Summoning contracts had first been created during the time of the Rikudo Sennin, when lesser animal demons known as dire beasts left the underworld and pleaded with Kami for her help in creating a place for them to live. Kami agreed to do this for them, on the condition that they form a pact with humanity, to help them when called upon by one who held their contract. Thus the first summoning contracts were formed. So this is a summoning contract, Naruto said as he picked it up. I didn't think it would be so large. This thing is almost half as large as I am. Most of them aren't that large, Akane explained. this contract must be one of the older summoning contracts. Ah, Naruto tied a strand of ninja wire to both ends of the summoning contract and placed it around his shoulder so that it sat on the opposite side of his sword. He grabbed the smaller scroll next and began looking for a way out. He really didn't want to go back the way he came. It took half an hour of searching, but eventually, Naruto found a passage way out on the wall that was opposite of the door he entered from. It was another exit that required his blood to pass through and led to a tunnel not unlike the catacombs, though he was supremely grateful when this one didn't have any traps in it. The tunnel led to an exit that led out to the beach on the opposite side of the shore that he came from. Looking out at the ocean, Naruto's enhanced vision could pick out the mass of land that was High no Kuni several dozen miles out. He walked further out to the beach, taking the summoning scroll off his back and laying it on the ground, unrolling it as he went. He studied the characters of the seal that represented the contract between summoning creature and summoner. To most it would just look like squiggly lines and would make no sense whatsoever. However, Naruto was not most people. He could read the seal as clear as if he was reading the newspaper. Interesting, so these seals are in actuality a spacetime ninjutsu designed to summon a dire beast from their chosen dimension. Some of these seals almost remind me of the ones found on Tusan's Hirashin kunai. I believe your father used summoning contracts as the basis for his jutsu, Akane said, though I can't be too sure. Anyways, why don't you sign it and give it a go? Just to warn you, the boss of the summoning contract is likely to test you and see if you are worthy of being their summoner. Just sign in your name in blood. After that all you have to do is sacrifice a little blood each time you want to use the jutsu. Naruto acknowledged her with the equivalent of a mental nod as he bit his thumb to draw blood. As he signed his name on the scroll, his eyes were drawn to those before. There weren't many names on this contract, aside from his now there were only 2 names total. The first, he didn't recognize. Of course, he didn't know the second one either, but the last name of the second was Uzumaki. Naruto figured this eventually became a scroll that the clan used, like dog contract that was used strictly by the Hatake clan in Konoha. He had to bite his thumb again in order to draw more blood, since his wound had already sealed up by then. Gathering about 1/4 of his chakra reserves, he went through the 4 required hand seals, boar, dog, monkey, ram, and slammed his hands in the ground. There was a large puff of smoke that covered nearly the entire beach, and when it cleared, Naruto found himself unsure whether to stare in amazement, or gulp in fright at the sight that greeted him. The first thing he noted was that it was large, able to easily cover nearly the entire beach. It had large scaly wings with 3 claws that protruded from the first fold at the top. A powerful set of quadrupedal hind legs with deadly-looking clawed feet. On the front were a set of powerful-looking humanoid arms with a hand that had 5 clawed fingers and looked similar to an eagle's talons. The head was streamlined and roughly triangular in shape, with a twin set of horns that moved back behind its head. The head was connected to a long neck that went into a sleek and powerful-looking body that had the wings protruding from the shoulder plates, and finished with a tail that was just as long as everything else and had what looked like a sword for the tail end. The entire creature was covered in dark blue scales that glistened and seemed to have an unnatural glow to them. Its head was covered in some type of golden armor that looked like a crown and covered from the head to the top half of the neck, and then all of the lower half before moving into a chest plate that covered the entire torso and even over 3/4 of the tail. The last piece of armor was located on the legs and ankle and looked like a shin guard from a fantasy story with knights and princesses. All told, the creature was both awe-inspiring in its majesty, and frightening in how powerful it looked. Naruto knew what this was. While no one had ever seen one for over 1,000 years, there were plenty of depictions in some of the books he had found in the library of this creature. It was a dragon, a creature of ancient myth that was not thought to actually exist anymore. The creature's head swung back and forth for a second or two, taking in its surrounding before its gold-slitted eyes focused on him. "Did you summon me, child?" asked the dragon, its voice a deep, rumbling basso. "That's right," Naruto said, squaring his shoulders and looking at the dragon directly in the eye with a "you got a problem with that" kind of look. He didn't care if this was a creature of ancient myth and legend, in about a year's time he wasn't even going to be human and he'd be damned if he started cowering like one. The dragon's lips peeled back in a smile, at least, Naruto thought it was a smile. Then again, it was kind of hard to think at seeing all those razor-sharp teeth. "You have courage, child, to stand up to me like this and not show fear." It breathed out a bit of fire from its nostrils as it spoke. "Tell me, boy, what is your name?" "Naruto Uzumaki." "An Uzumaki?" The dragon seemed surprised. "Interesting. So, another Uzumaki has come to challenge me for the right to use me and my kin as summons." "How many came before me?" asked Naruto, curious. "Oh, plenty," the dragon said. "I have had hundreds of your people try and sign my contract, but only 2 have ever survived my test. I hope for your sake, you survive as well." "What do you—" Naruto's eyes widened as a large breath of flame sped towards him. He pushed chakra into his legs and jumped into the air, just barely dodging the large flame. He was shocked to see that the flame had turned the sand where he had been into glass. He dropped back down and glared at the large dragon. What the hell was that for? "Your test is to be trialed by combat," the dragon said, roaring out the words in a booming voice. "Dragons are warriors, and only a true warrior can be allowed to summon me and my kin. Now prepare yourself." "Shit!" Naruto yelled as more flames shot from the dragon's nose. Naruto dodged out of the way, racing across the sand and shooting towards the dragon's side in an effort to get in the creature's blind side. It didn't work quite the way he had expected it as the dragon's tail shot towards him and he was only barely able to jump over it. However, that wasn't the end as the tail came back and this time the whiskered blonde had to duck. Even then he could feel the power behind the swing as it rushed past him. That attack could have easily taken his head off. Not wanting the creature to get the upper hand, Naruto ran towards it. The tails once again came into play, but the blonde sliced his hand towards it and shot a wind blade that hit the tail and caused it to halt its movements long enough so that he was too far in the dragon's guard for the tail to properly hit him. That didn't mean the dragon didn't have other means of fighting him, as Naruto soon found out. As the dragon turned its head and sent another blast of fire at the blonde, it also lashed out with its clawed left hand. Naruto sucked in a deep breath, even as Akane began channeling Yuki to his throat. He released a pure white ball of flame that smacked into the fire, causing a huge explosion that sent a shock wave at both of them. The dragon stumbled a bit, but Naruto was able to channel chakra to his feet and stick to the ground, allowing him to block the swung clawed hand that had been weakened due to the dragon being knocked a little off balance from the shock wave with his sword. However, as Naruto came in closer to try and do some damage, he could forgot about one thing. It was only after he had been smacked away by one of the large wings that he remembered them. Flipping through air, Naruto landed on his feet several meters away and continued to skid along the ground, leaving small trench marks in the sand. The dragon opened its large mouth and shot several balls of blue fire at the whiskered blonde, who was soon moving across the landscape in a zigzag pattern as he dodged the attacks. Naruto did his best to ignore the explosions going on behind him each time one of the fireballs missed, the heat that washed over him with the gust of wind caused by the blasts. Moving in, Naruto went through several hand seals and opened his mouth, shooting out a bolt of lightning. He nearly cheered when he saw that he had forced the dragon to actually move, figuring it was some great accomplishment since the damn thing had just been standing there the whole time. However, his thoughts soon turned dark when he saw the dragon take off into the air and simply hover several dozen feet off the ground. "Oh come on," the blonde complained, "that is so not cool." He didn't know whether the dragon heard him or not, but as the great summon began shooting out more fireballs he supposed it didn't matter. Naruto found himself running around, jumping, rolling, twisting and doing everything in his power not to get incinerated by the large balls of flame. All the while trying to figure out which jutsu in his arsenal would be best to hit the now flying dragon. He had several powerful attacks that he was sure would damage the great creature if they hit. However, they had several drawbacks, the key one being they needed to hit their target in order to do anything. There was also the fact that his most powerful jutsu did more damage to him than was healthy, and Naruto didn't want to be a sitting duck if they didn't hit. Futon jutsu wouldn't work, the dragon was shooting fireballs at him. Wind's elemental weakness was fire, and it would strengthen any attacks the dragon sent his way. Lightning might work, but he only had two with the capability to reach that high, and one was too slow, while the other didn't have that kind of reach without using a lot of chakra, more than it was really worth. His Uzumaki Hijitsu might work, unfortunately there weren't that many shadows to use his Yamadan techniques, which only really worked when there were a lot of shadows or total darkness, and his Hiton techniques didn't have the necessary range. The only thing he could think to do was match fire with fire. Going through several hand seals, Naruto finished and cupped his mouth with one hand. He blew out a large fire dragon that blazed towards the real dragon. Said creature snorted as he let the dragon plow into itself. There was a large explosion and Naruto waited on bated breath to see if his attack had done any damage. He didn't have to wait long as a large fireball flew down towards him. "Oh, you have got to be shitting me." As the large ball of flame grew bigger, Naruto unsheathed his blade and moved into a kenjutsu stance. He calmed his breathing and began channeling a massive amount of chakra through his blade, Uzumaki Hijitsu, Ranpu Kirite, Uzumaki Secret Technique, Light Release, Light Cutter. Letting loose a roar, Naruto swung his blade in an upwards diagonal motion, release a powerful crescent moon-shaped blade of light. The blade hit the fireball and the two forces pushed against each other, vying the other for superiority of strength. It was the ultimate test of Naruto's power, pitting one of his most powerful bladed techniques, one he had only ever done in theory before, against that of a fireball from a powerful summons. In the end only one of attacks would win. Sadly for Naruto, it was not his. After nearly a minute of the two powerful attacks pushing against each other, it was the fireball that engulfed Naruto's Hiton crescent moon blade. The whiskered blonde's eyes widened as the jutsu continued barreling down towards him, and he had less than a second to react as the powerful fire attack smashed into the ground. The explosion from the blast rocked the very foundations of the island, a pillar of fire shot up into the air, so high that the people in a small port town off the coast Hai no Kuni could actually see the blast and were left wondering what it was from. A giant mushroom cloud of smoke followed the fire, billowing up from the ground. It took several minutes for the smoke to clear, and when it did the dragon saw that its attack had left a large crater 30 feet wide by 15 feet deep. I must be losing my touch, it said in its rumbling growl. Normally my explosions cause a larger crater than that. Oh, what's this? If the dragon had eyebrows, they would have been raised at seeing the young whiskered blonde climbing out of the crater. He didn't, so all he could do was watch in surprise as Naruto managed to pull himself out, using his sword as a crutch as he climbed to his feet. The boy had definitely seen better days. His clothes were utterly ruined, half of his shirt was gone and his pants were so short they went up to his thighs, both having been burnt off. What little was left of them was burnt and torn, as if it had faced fierce fires followed by an even fiercer cutting wind. All of the skin that was shown was burnt, some areas were second degree, but more than a few held third-degree burns as well, namely his face and upper chest. Yet the dragon received a surprise, not just in the boy rising up from an attack that should have killed him, but also seeing the more serious burns beginning to hiss and steam as they slowly healed up. "How are you not dead?" "Boy?" asked the dragon, his voice sounded more curious than anything. That attack should have killed a normal human, even an Uzumaki would never have been able to withstand that attack. Naruto winced as he took in a breath, he felt like shit, and that was being modest. His entire body felt like it had been dipped in lava. Even so, he smirked at the dragon as he said, "Right before your attack hit I used one of my most powerful defensive jutsus, Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf flashback." Just seconds before the fireball smashed into him, Naruto sheathed his blade and began channeling mass amounts of chakra through it, more than he ever had before. The jutsu he was about to use hadn't even been practiced, it was something he had thought about in theory only, and the chances of it working were very slim. Unfortunately, he didn't really have any choice, He only had one defensive jutsu and it was a wind jutsu, and that would simply make the fireball fry him faster. Uzumaki Hijitsu, Haitan, a Y no Tate, Uzumaki hidden technique, light release, shield of light, a nearly white film of bright, glowing chakra burst from the cracks of the sheathed blade. He pulled Hikage no Ukami out and sliced down in one smooth motion. A mere second later the fireball hit a large dun of light before exploding, protecting Naruto from the worst damage. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It was a close thing, Naruto admitted. Had I been a second late with that jutsu I would have died. Even with that my jutsu still failed as the explosion was dying down. If it weren't for the fact that I am the Jinchuriki for the Kyubi no Yoko I probably would have died. The Kyubi no Yoko, the dragon's eyes, despite not really widening, still managed to portray its shock. This child held the most powerful demon in the world. The one who had been instrumental in the many wars that humanity had against demonkind. Now this was interesting, the dragon murmured as it eyed the boy who somehow managed to lift his blade and get into a fighting stance. It could tell the boy was on his last leg. If the way he was slouched over wasn't enough, then the fact that his eyes were half-lidded and droopy and he was panting heavily did. It was amazing that he had even survived its fireball, much less had the energy to continue putting up a defiant stance. Put away your sword, child, the dragon said, confusing the boy. You have proven yourself to me. I, Bahamut, king of all dragons, grant you permission to be our summoner. Really? Asked Naruto, too tired to actually give any emotion other than exhaustion. Bahamut nodded, amused when the blonde fell onto his back side and breathed out, thank Kami. We dragons shall fight beside you, young one, Bahamut continued, should you need us, just summon us and we shall fight for you. Noticing that the boy was too tired to pay attention, the great dragon let loose a chuckle and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Ugh! Naruto moaned pitifully, I think this battle was worse than fighting the Sanbai. Akane shook her head and smiled, even as she released the breath she had been holding for nearly the entire fight. You did an excellent job, Narukin. To be a summoner of the dragon contract is probably one of the greatest honors. In fact, the dragon contract is one of 4 legendary contracts and holds the most powerful fighters, and, Narukin, she questioned when she noticed that she could no longer see out of his eyes. It was then she realized he had passed out and she snickered a little, I guess he's all tuckered out. Then again, he did just fight the Dragon King. I'll inform him of the dragon contract later. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It was 2 days later that Naruto found himself in the port town that was closest to Yuzu no Kuni, a small port located off the edge of Hai no Kuni. After waking up, the blonde had cleaned himself of the grime of battle and thanked the high heavens that he had the forethought to bring several sets of clothing. If not, he would have likely been the center of attention when he came into town. Or it would be more accurate to say that he would have even more attention than he already did, thanks to a lot of people having seen him running across the ocean to reach the town. Now he just had to find a place to stay. Having walked across a 12-mile expanse of ocean, Naruto was dead tired and wanted nothing more than to rest. He walked around town until his eyes landed on the first hotel in the city. He opened the door and walked in, renting out a room and marching upstairs. He didn't even bother to take off his clothes as his head hit the pillow and he passed out. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Almost too soon Naruto woke up due to the light shining in from the window. He let loose a groan before rolling out of bed and entering the shower. After turning the water on to its hottest setting, the still tired blonde proceeded to strip out of his clothes from yesterday before taking a long shower. Getting out only after he felt himself waking up fully. After getting dressed again, he went downstairs and was about to sit down at one of the tables in the bar to get some breakfast when his eyes landed on a family of 3. A man with dark brown hair and gray eyes was sitting with a woman that had light brown hair and brown eyes. Both of them looked to be in their mid-40s, though they seemed to have aged prematurely due to the lines around their eyes and mouths. A little boy of about 8 sat with them, looking like a combination between the two. Naruto changed directions as soon as his eyes had landed on them and he was standing in front of the man. Excuse me? The man blinked as he looked up at Naruto, who right now was looking like a man in his mid-30s with jet black hair and black eyes. "Yes. Can I help you?" he asked. Naruto shook his head. "No, I actually wanted to give you something." The word seemed to confuse the man until Naruto pulled out a locket with the word Carla written on the back. The blonde-haired woman gasped and watched as the man's eyes began to water, even as he took the locket from Naruto's hand. Where did you get this?" the man asked, his voice quivering, and it wasn't hard to see the man was just barely holding himself together. "I had actually heard about bandits raiding the town where your daughter was kidnapped," the blonde said. "I had managed to find them and take them and found that locket, but by the time I did you had already left." Naruto's eyes softened as he watched the woman and man start to tear up. He turned around and was about to leave and a hand rested on his shoulder. Naruto turned his head to see the man, tears unabashedly running down his cheeks, clutching the locket to his chest. "Thank you," he croaked out, "for allowing us to at least know the fate of our daughter." Naruto closed his eyes. He had already shed his tears and he would be damned if he began crying over this again. "You don't need to thank me, I was unable to save her, the very least I could do was avenge her death," he said quietly. "Did she suffer?" "No," Naruto lied. He didn't tell the man that his daughter had been desecrated in the most disgusting way possible. It was bad enough they now had absolute proof of their daughter's demise that he wouldn't add to their pain. "However, you can be assured that the people who killed her did." The man seemed to nod and Naruto was almost sure that the merchant knew he was lying, but he seemed to accept it and smiled at him. "Then I do owe you my thanks, for avenging my daughter." The man tried to pull out his wallet but Naruto's hand stopped him. "Keep your money," Naruto said, "if you really want to thank me then just protect your son. I have no need for money and wouldn't think to take it from you." "If you're sure," the man said, taking his hand out of his pocket as Naruto let go. "Thank you again." Nodding to the man, Naruto left the hotel, his appetite gone. "Are you alright, Narukin?" asked Akane, concerned this might have opened up an old wound. "Fine," Naruto said, "strangely, I feel like I've been given some kind of closure, or maybe like an old wound has finally healed." Akane poured in her love and compassion through the seal. "I'm glad." Naruto smiled as he made his way out of the town. Just as he was leaving, a strange wind blew across his path. He couldn't be sure, but Naruto could swear the wind sounded like the voice of a young woman saying, "Thank you." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. After Naruto got home, the first thing Naruto did was have his Chishio Bunshin dispel. Due to the amount of time he had spent away, Naruto had to meditate in order to sort through the memories of his clone. Both he and Akane were greatly amused by some of the pranks his Bunshin had played on the people of Konoha, particularly on the clans and one Sasuke Uchiha. They spent a good few minutes laughing at certain instances in the clone's memory before they were finished. Later on, Naruto worked on the issues of Arashir Kazama, creating 200 clones to begin making seals that he could give to Kaizuki. Hopefully by this time tomorrow they would have the 1,000 seals that the man wanted for his store. With his affairs in order, Naruto finally allowed himself to lay down on his bed and enter the seal. He appeared next to the lake with the waterfall that he had first seen Akane nude in, blushing a bit at the memory that the sight invoked. It took a bit of walking before he found where Akane was. Sometime during his stint in Mizu no Kuni, she had fashioned a small hut made of wood with a traditional Japanese sliding door. Walking up to it, Naruto slid the door open and stepped in, taking off his shoes and setting them aside just after he closed the door. He turned and looked into the room. It was very Spartan in the sense that there was not that much decoration to the room and only a few amenities. It had all the standards of a bedroom, a dresser, a nightstand, a desk, a bookshelf filled with books, and a bed. Despite the fact that it didn't hold much in it, everything it did hold was extravagantly done. The wood was all some kind of very rich-looking dark wood that was polished to a shine and had golden inlays of the Uzumaki clan symbol in them, and the bed was large enough to hold 6 or 7 people easily, with very soft, velvety-looking crimson sheets and the plush pillows. And lying on that bed was none other than Akane, sleeping soundly. Naruto smiled as he crept over to the bed and sat down, sinking into the mattress slightly and causing the vixen to shift in her sleep. He took in her form, running his eyes over her body. She wasn't under the covers and her choice of clothing was just a sheer nightgown that allowed Naruto to see every part of her as clear as if she were wearing nothing at all. He easily noticed that the only other piece of clothing she was wearing were black, lace panties. Reaching out with a hand he moved his fingers into her hair and began to run them along the red of the woman's crimson locks. Akane's face lit up in a small smile as she moved into his hand and Naruto grinned as he heard her begin to purr. He looked at her lush and full-looking crimson-colored lips. They were slightly parted in an adorable expression and Naruto couldn't help himself as he leaned down and kissed them. Though the touch was feather-light, Akane hadn't been sleeping that heavily at the moment, having only been taking a small fox nap. She refused to call it a cat nap for reasons she wouldn't tell Naruto. Thus it wasn't surprising that she woke up to feel his lips caressing her own. A smile found its way to her face as she began to kiss back, wrapping her arms around Naruto and pulling him down on so that he straddling her. The position didn't last as she rolled them over until she was on top of him, situated between his legs as they continued enjoying the feeling of being so close and open with one another. When they broke the kiss, Akane smiled at him. I hope I can expect that kind of wake-up call from you all the time. Naruto grinned as he gave her a small peck on the nose. If that's what you want, I'd be more than happy to oblige you. Akane's smile grew into a grin that matched her blonde lover's and she twirled a strand of hair between her fingers. So is there a reason you woke me up? Honestly? Naruto shrugged. I simply couldn't help myself. You just looked so adorable that I felt this overwhelming urge to kiss you. A small blush grew over Akane's face, but she kept up her grin. Just kiss me. You don't want to anything more. You know, as a kitsune I know much about the art of intimacy. Now it was Naruto's turn to blush. I think I'm a little too young for that. He saw Akane pout and said, I mean, we just got together a few days ago and also. Yeah, I understand. She laid her head down against Naruto's chest and closed her eyes. You're just lucky I love you enough that I'm willing to wait. She lifted her head and glared at him. Just know that once I turn you into a Hanyu we are not waiting any longer. Got it? Got it, Naruto said with a beet red face and, much to Akane's amusement, a trickle of blood from his nose. She laid back down and closed her eyes again. Good. Now, get some sleep. We've got a long 2 years ahead of us. Right, Naruto's arms pulled Akane into a tighter embrace, one the vixen welcomed as the two of them went to sleep. It would only be 2 more years before Naruto's graduation from the academy and his ascension into demonhood. Akane would have to teach him just what being a Hanyu meant during that time. Hopefully, he would be ready for some of the consequences that came with it. It was a beautiful day in the village of Konohagakure no Sato, the village hidden in the leaves. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in its red and gold hue, setting the trees ablaze. Shops were beginning to open up and get ready to begin the day as a gentle breeze blew through the village. Everyone could tell it was going to be a beautiful day. Everyone except Naruto Uzumaki, who was too busy finishing his warm-up exercise to notice that, and he had no windows in his room so he couldn't actually see outside of his apartment anyways. Currently, the young whiskered, marked blonde was doing his usual run around the lake inside of his apartment flat. Due to the harsh training he had gone through for the previous 7 years of his life, as well as the civil war he had been involved in just 2 years ago, he was already used to getting up before the crack of dawn. Even Akane couldn't stop his internal alarm clock anymore. And she had stopped trying years ago. Naruto let loose a deep breath as he finished his morning run and then stretched his muscles before heading back upstairs. He divested himself of his pants before he even reached the second floor, throwing it into a dirty hamper before the rest of his sweat-soaked clothing followed. Now completely in the buff, he moved into his jacuzzi tub and turned on the shower head. He sighed in relief as the warm water began to spray on him, helping ease the tension in his back, legs and just about every other muscle in his body. He stayed in there for nearly half an hour before finally washing himself off. You should probably hurry up, Naruto, an amused voice spoke within his mind. You know the dolphin's gonna be upset if you're late to your graduation test. I know, don't worry so much, Akane-kan, Naruto replied as he stepped out of the shower and grabbed a towel located on a small rack next to the tub. He quickly proceeded to dry himself off before moving out of the bathroom, or the general area of his bath, since he had no real walls to separate rooms. As he continued moving, he stopped and looked at himself in the mirror. He had grown well, no longer the malnourished little child he had been before meeting Akane. At 5'1" he was the tallest kid in his class, at least he would be if his class had seen him outside of his chibi form. Aside from being as tall as he was, Naruto's body was covered in hard whipcord-like muscles. They weren't bulky like the ones he had seen on some ninja. He had trained his body to rely on a perfect balance between speed and strength, thus his muscles were toned in such a way that even the slightest of movements made them flex, yet he kept off all of the unwanted bulk that would weigh him down. Unlike most people in Konoha who had pale to fair skin, Naruto had light tan skin. His face was almost an exact replication of his father's, with bright blue eyes and a face that any woman worth her salt would consider drool-worthy. His general facial structure was angular with a strong jawline while still somehow managing to maintain a soft, boyish look, giving him what would be considered by many women to be a roguelike charm. His hair consisted of spiky sun-kissed golden blonde locks with a fringe went down to his eyes and two jaw-length bangs on either side, a style he had taken in remembrance of his father, and it was a good way to both insult and confuse the people who had abused him as a kid. How sweet of you, Naruto, you know I always enjoy a good show, Akane teased, causing Naruto to blush lightly at being caught inspecting himself in the mirror. Maybe you could dance for me too. Perhaps later, Naruto said, trying to get back at her, so long as you behave yourself, my Beneheim. So long as you back up that promise I'll be good, Akane said as Naruto walked over to the dresser and began to pull out his clothes for today. Today's the day I stop hiding, Naruto said, more to himself than Akane, but she heard him all the same. He set his clothes on the bed and began to get changed. When he finished, he moved to his closet and pulled out several items, a box, his sword, Hikijukami, and his sheath. Setting the box down and opening, he began to pull out the contents, said contents being armor plating. One by one he put the armor on, locking each piece in place before setting his sword in its sheath and strapping it to his back. Finally finished with his clothes, he went back over to the mirror to make sure everything looked perfect. The clothing he had on was pure black, a pair of sturdy ninja-styled pants and a skin-tight, black sleeveless shirt that had a built-in shinobi mask that would conceal the lower half of his face if it were up at the moment. He had white bandages wrapped around both of his ankles and a pair of black armbands that went from his wrist to mid-bicep. Over his ankles he had a pair metal shin guards and forearm protectors on his wrists. Both sets of armor had a red Uzumaki clan crest on them. Likewise, he had a pair of iron-plated fingerless gloves that had an inlaid grip on his palm. He had a kunai pouch strapped to each leg and another pouch behind him that held his scrolls. Finishing his outfit, he had leather straps around his back and chest, which held the sheath his sword was in. "What do you think, Akane-kan?" asked Naruto as he adjusted the sword on his back. He heard a very sexy purr in his mind, "You look delicious enough to eat. In fact, when you come home today I may just end up feasting on you." Naruto blushed at the double meaning to her words, but after years of her flirtatious ways, he was more than up to the task of teasing her back. "So long as you let me return the favor," he said, his voice coming out with a slight growl. Akane shivered lightly as Naruto moved away from the mirror and headed downstairs, sitting at the table in his kitchen as Akage Bunshin just finished setting his breakfast on the table. "Thank you," Naruto said despite the fact that he was essentially thanking himself. The clone seemed to appreciate the little things though, as did this one who nodded and vanished in a puff of smoke. As Naruto began to eat, Akane decided to broach the subject on something that would soon become prevalent tonight. "You remember what tonight is, right? Tonight is the night I become a half-demon." Naruto didn't even have to think about it in order to remember the significance of this day. Akane had been preparing him for his ascension to half-demon for the past 2 years now, what it would mean for him. He had long stopped thinking of himself as a human, and was more than ready for his ascension. "That's right," Akane said, "so I want you to create several Kage Bunshin and have them begin preparing the seals inside of one of the abandoned rooms." "What time will we begin the ceremony?" asked Naruto as he finished eating and made another clone to clean the dishes. "Midnight." Naruto nodded as he made his way outside, sealing the door shut before he began his walk to the academy. On the way there he enjoyed all of the looks of absolute shock he could see written on the faces of the people around him. So surprised were they that they didn't even notice his whisker marks as they began whispering and muttering as he passed. Though, while he enjoyed those looks, feeling that these people deserved it for being so stupid and not noticing his looks even when he was a chibi, he did not enjoy the looks of undisguised lust that were sent his way by many of the women. Deciding he didn't like being eyed like a piece of meat, the whiskered blonde pulled up his face mask, though it could only do so much. "Ah, does little Narakin not like the attention he's getting?" asked Akane with a teasing coo. "No, well, a little," Naruto admitted. "I enjoyed the looks of shock and surprise. However, only you're allowed to look at me like these women are." Akane found herself smiling as a light red tinge came to her cheeks. "My, don't you know how to make a woman feel special?" Naruto smirked underneath his mask. "I try." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. As Iruka Yumino looked at the rowdy and loud class, he couldn't help but feel relief that the year was almost up. These past 4 years had been one of the most trying he had ever had, and he would be glad when it was all over. "All right, everybody quiet down." His words seemed to fall on deaf ears as the class continued to talk, speaking in loud voices about how they were finally going to be ninja. "Settle down, class." His voice was a little louder but still didn't really have any effect. Several tick marks popped up on his forehead before he used his Oni Hitsu no Jutsu, Demon Head Technique, a jutsu that expanded his head to 3 times its normal size, and shouted, "Sit down and shut up, you brats." The effects were immediate as all of the kids were suddenly in their seats and their mouths were zipped closed. Iruka coughed into his hand as he began what would be the last day of teaching this year. "It's time for roll call. When I call your name, let me know you're here." "Aburame, Shino." Shino merely raised his hand, letting Iruka know he was there. "Akamichi, Koji." "Munch here, munch." This was how it went, as Iruka called out a name and got a response, until he reached one near the end. "Uzumaki, Naruto." Silence. "Uzumaki, Naruto." He tried again only to get silence. He looked around and frowned when he didn't see the spiky-headed blonde anywhere. He was slightly worried. Despite not really liking him when he first started teaching, Iruka had decided to go on the Sandame's advice and give the kid a chance. He had been very surprised to find that the blonde was a lot like he had been when he was in school, acting out and playing pranks, like Iruka had done at that age. Naruto was crying for attention. Because of those similarities, he had begun to see the blonde ball of sunshine as a surrogate brother. Meanwhile, Mizuki's frown went unnoticed by everyone. "Uzumaki, Naruto. You should just pass him," said Kiba in a loud and brash voice. "It's not like that loser's going to pass anyways." Iruka frowned and opened his mouth. Whether to berate Kiba or begin taking roll call again, even Iruka didn't know. Nor did he get the chance to find out, for as soon as the Chunin instructor's mouth opened, so too did the door. Or rather, the door was smashed off its hinges and sent flying, crashing into the opposite wall as someone kicked it in. Everyone turned, eyes wide in surprise as they saw a tall blonde kid with spiky golden hair walk in. The guys were all left wondering who the hell this new guy was. Well, most guys. One Shikamaru Nara just muttered a quick, "troublesome," before going back to sleep. Meanwhile, the females in the room all began to swoon, wondering who the hunk that was even hotter than Sasuke-kun was. Again, all except one pink-haired banshee who instantly hated the blonde for trying to upstage her Sasuke-kun. "Can I help you?" asked Iruka, wondering who this yandere look-alike was. It had actually taken him a moment to bring in his surprise. Whoever this kid was, he looked like an almost carbon copy of the yandere. In fact, the only reason Irika hadn't immediately suspected this kid was the yondaime was the height difference, and the fact that said man had been dead for 12 years. And ask why you kicked my door down. The young man grinned sheepishly as he raised a hand behind his head. All of the girls gulped as they saw the smile on his face, complete with Bishonen-level sparkles around him, to them, at least, as well as the way his biceps flexed when he moved. Sorry about that, sensei, the teen said in a vaguely familiar voice, though Irika couldn't help but think it should have a lighter tone. I guess I got so excited about graduation that I couldn't contain myself. What are you talking about, graduation? Asked Irika, getting more confused by the second. You're not in my class. The blonde gave a pout. Do you seriously not know who I am, sensei? I'm rather hurt. Irika studied the blonde closely as he tried to work out what the kid meant. He was sure he had never seen him anywhere before in his life. After all, it would be hard to miss someone who could be the Yondaime Hokage's twin. It wasn't until he noticed the 3 whisker marks that ran across each cheek that he realized who he was looking at. And Naruto? He asked, with his jaw dropping to the floor. At that statement, every other person in class looked more closely at the blonde and noticed the whisker-like marks adorning his cheeks. At seeing the birthmarks that only one person in Konoha had, everyone had a similar line of thought. That's Naruto. Well, all except for Hinata, that is, whose thought processes didn't even get that far before she passed out via nosebleed. I'm glad to see I haven't been forgotten so easily, Naruto said with a smirk. Right, well, you can't really blame me, Irika said, still trying to decide if this really was Naruto. Can I ask what, happened to you? Sorry, sensei, Naruto replied as he walked further in the room. All I can tell you is that a ninja's best weapon is deception. And with that, Irika's eyes widened as he realized what he meant. Though he was saddened that Naruto would hide this from others, he also couldn't help but wonder how he was able to hide something like this from everyone. Meanwhile, all of the students were confused, wonder what the whiskered blonde meant by that. Naruto just sat down next to Shino, taking off his sword and setting it on the table before offering the bug user a nod, and getting a nod in return. No one but Naruto noticed the way Mizuki glared at the blonde. Attendance continued after the interruption, with Ino Yamanaka being the last person. Irika then decided to get right down to the test. It's now time for the test. This will consist of a 4-part exam, a written test, an accuracy test, a taijutsu test, and a ninjutsu test. We will start with the written exam, which Mizuki will pass out to all of you. As he said that, Mizuki grabbed a sheet of test papers, handing them out to each person. He got to Naruto and sneered but handed him the paper anyways. Naruto wasn't surprised to see that it was not genjutsu'd. Irika may not have liked Naruto at first, but even then he had been fair and never put up with Mizuki trying anything. The man wouldn't dare attempt to mess with a test as important as this. But just in case, Naruto sent a pulse of chakra at his paper to make sure there was no genjutsu before beginning. The written exam was easy, boringly so. Naruto ended up finishing his test within the first 15 minutes and was now leaning back in his chair with his feet propped up on the desk. Several people, mainly girls, looked back at him. One, Hinata Hyuga, was particularly bad in that respect. When the test ended, Irika called time. Turn in your test papers and head out to the training ground in the back. It's time for the physical portion of the exam. Everyone did as told. Naruto waited to go last and slipped his paper somewhere in the middle so Mizuki couldn't meddle with it. Afterwards he followed everyone else outside. We're going to begin with the accuracy test first, Irika said. When I call your name, please come up and throw the shuriken, then the kunai. Aburame, Shino. Things went like they did every time they practiced accuracy. Shino and Kiba scored good grades, 8 out of 10 shuriken, and 8 out of 10 kunai for Kiba, and 9 out of 10 shuriken, and 10 out of 10 kunai for Shino. Meanwhile, Sasuke once again scored a perfect 10 out of 10 for both, and as he had done every time during weapons throwing, he threw his each set of weapons at once. Everyone else scores somewhere in between. The civilians were still only slightly better due to the fact that they could only practice at school. Uzumaki, Naruto. Naruto grinned brightly as he made his way up. He looked at Iruka to see the man giving him an encouraging smile. Just relax, Naruto, and you'll do fine. Oh, don't worry about me, sensei, Naruto said with a bright smile as he took the shuriken. I've got this covered. With that he threw all 10 shuriken with both hands. The spinning ninja stars sailed with deadly accuracy at the wooden training dummy, hitting the wood with 10 loud thunks in quick succession. Everyone stared in shock while Naruto grinned at his creation. Ah, look, he's smiling. Indeed, Naruto was right, the wooden target dummy, which was vaguely human-shaped, had all 10 shuriken lodged in its head, the ninja stars arranged in such a way that it looked like a smiling face. Gee, good job. Iruka said, both surprised and pleased as he wrote down the score on his clipboard. Now the kunai. Naruto took the kunai and gave a thoughtful frown, wondering what he should make next. The next moment his eyes brightened and he threw all 10 kunai at the same time. This time, he decided to try something different. As the pointed weapons hit the dummy, they didn't just stop at the dummy. Instead they blew 10 holes right through the training dummy's chest, showering the general vicinity with wood chips as the kunai continued on to hit the tree behind it with several loud cracks, embedding themselves deeply in the wood. Everyone stared in wonder at the holes, their eyes wide and mouths agape. Many of the students were unsure what to think as they looked from the holes to the new, to them, Naruto. Excellent job. Iruka said, no longer surprised by what he was seeing. After that first display, Iruka had realized that Naruto had hidden more than just his looks, he had hidden his skills. The scarred Chunin was slightly saddened that Naruto even felt the need to hide his talents from others, but also proud that the blonde had taken the most important shinobi principle and applied it in such a way that he had fooled everyone around him. Heh, what did you expect, sensei? Asked Naruto in a rhetorical fashion as he walked back to the crowd of genin while Ino Yamanaka went up for her test. As he stood there, many of the male students eyed him wearily, wondering where this sudden well of talent sprung up, or if it was just luck. At the same time, many of the females had switched their attention from Sasuke to Naruto, causing said blonde to hide a shiver. The next stage of the test was the taijutsu portion. After they had all moved towards the sparring field, a small dirt field with a metal ring around it, Iruka called out names while Mizuki stepped into the field. Naruto didn't even need to pay attention to the test to know who would do well in this portion. Shino would do enough to get a high passing grade, but no more than was strictly necessary so he could hide his skills. Kiba would do his best, actually getting the second highest grade, at least he normally would, if Naruto had any intention of holding back. Sasuke would get the best score there, Choji would be fourth, Shikamaru would be last, being too lazy to do more than last the required 10 minutes. Hinata would actually do alright, she never hit her opponent because she was afraid, but she lasted the full 10 minutes without getting hit either. Ino and Sakura would both do horribly, neither trained and dieted so they did not have the physical prowess to do much, and the civilian children were everywhere in between. A grin once again had spread across his face as he walked onto the sparring field. By now, everyone expected him to do something shocking and were actually taking bets on how good he would do. I think he's gonna fail, Kiba said. I mean, it had to be luck, he's the dead last for crying out loud. How good could he be? Right, Akamaru, the white pup on his head barked in what sounded like an affirmative. I don't know, Choji muttered. I mean, did you see what he did with those kunai? And how about when he made that smiley face with the shuriken? Like I said, I bet it was all luck, Kiba said, turning to the kid who was taking bets. Put me down for 5 yen on him losing. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered. Put me down for 5 yen on him getting the top score. Everyone turned and stared at Shino in shock, having never spoken in class most just thought he was mute. Hell, the one time Iruka had tried to make him speak the bug user had just stared the man down until he called on someone else. The bet taker just nodded dumbly and put Shino's name down. Ready? Asked Iruka, looking at Naruto and therefore missing the smirk on Mizuki's face. Though Naruto didn't, I am so going to enjoy wiping that look off his face. Out loud he said, "I was born ready, sensei." Right, then Hajime. Almost before the words had even left Irika's mouth, Mizuki was charging the whiskered blonde. To most of the genin there, the Chunin was more of a blur than a consistent shape. Only Sasuke, Shino and Kiba could actually keep up with him. Naruto could too, of course, but comparing the way Naruto saw him to the way others saw him simply wasn't fair. Because to Naruto the guy was moving at a snail's pace, and that was an insult to the snail. Mizuki came in and reared back his fist, throwing it out in an effort to hit the blonde. He smirked as Naruto didn't move, only for his eyes to widen as his fist passed right through the blonde's face. He stumbled and looked around wide-eyed as he tried to find out where the blonde kid had gone. However, no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't seem to find Naruto, not in front of him, not to the left, or the right, not behind, not even above. It was like the damn brat had disappeared. Little did Mizuki know that Naruto was in fact, right next to him. He had taken to hiding right behind the Chunin Academy instructor, moving whenever the older male moved so that he stayed behind him at all times. Naruto looked over at the other academy students who were watching wide-eyed, and winked before holding a finger to his lips, getting most people to put a fist in their mouths to keep from laughing. "I think he ran off, Irika," Mizuki said, keeping his voice light even though there was a very slight sneer in it that Naruto could detect. "Since he's not here, I guess that means he fails." Actually he's," Irika tried to point behind Mizuki, but it was at that moment that Naruto decided to make himself known. By kicking Mizuki right in the ass. "Ah!" Mizuki screamed as he flew into the air, his hands holding onto his now in deep pain-ass crack. It not only hurt, but the whole thing was so shocking that he couldn't even flip himself to land on his feet, instead landing right on his ass. Mhem ha 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 ha. Naruto began laughing loudly, along with the rest of the class, -2, even Irika was trying to contain his snicker. Enraged and embarrassed, Mizuki jumped up and spun around, charging at Naruto who was grinning widely. The white-haired instructor threw out his fist, only for Naruto to tilt his head to the side, letting the fist pass by and just barely graze his hair, grabbing the Chunin's wrist with his left hand, and yanking on it. Then, when Mizuki's eyes widened and he found himself flying toward the blonde academy student, Naruto jumped into the air and smashed his foot right in Mizuki's chest, letting go of the wrist simultaneously. The end result? Mizuki was sent flying backwards, out of the ring. The only real reason he even stopped flying was because the wall of the academy was on that side. A wall that he hit hard enough to leave spiderweb cracks in, before he slid down the wall, completely unconscious. Eyes once again widened, the others were too shocked by what had just transpired in the last 10 minutes to even begin whispering about what they had seen. While everyone had expected something surprising from the blonde Uzumaki, no one had suspected this. "So," Naruto began conversationally, getting everyone to turn their eyes back to him, "did I pass?" The resulting mass face fault was one that he would remember for all time. "Why, yes, you passed." Despite having told himself he would not be surprised, Irika found himself surprised. That word he felt was a particular understatement because it didn't really do his state of perpetual shock justice. Still, he marked Naruto off on the board as having received a perfect score. When the last person finished the outside practical portion, and after the several seconds it took to wake up Mizuki, the class made their way back inside the academy. As he walked, Naruto was confronted by several of the students he had gotten to know in his time here, the main one being Kiba, who, in a loud voice asked, "What the hell was that?" Naruto tilted his head to the side and blinked at him. He discreetly did his best to ignore the disturbing, squee, sound that came from all girls save two, and asked a question of his own, "What do you mean?" "Gur. You know damn well what I mean." Kiba growled, "How the hell did you take out Mizuki like that?" "Oh, that," Naruto said lightly, his mischievous grin coming into play. He stopped suddenly, causing all those behind him to as well. Leaning in, he made everyone else do so, hoping that he would tell him just what happened. That, they would all be disappointed, is a secret. Another round of facefaults followed and Naruto led a small chuckle against him as he walked into their classroom. That damn Naruto, Kiba growled, well I won't lose to him. We'll show him who's top dog, Akamaru. TCH, this is so troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he followed everyone else in as well. It's time for the last portion of your exam, Iruka said as everyone was seated. The ninjutsu portion, when I call your name, I want you to perform the 3 Academy Jutsu, Henge, Transformation, Kariwimi, Replacement, and the Bunshin no Jutsu, Clone Jutsu. Everyone began talking as soon as Iruka left. Conversations varied, the guys talked about how cool it was they would soon be ninja, and a few were cracking jokes at how stupid Mizuki looked when Naruto kicked his ass. That last one caused Naruto to smile. The girls on the other hand were holding a gossip about boys, namely 2. I don't know who to choose, said girl number 3. I mean, look at them. They're both so hot. I know, girl number 4 said, Sasuke-kun has that dark, mysterious look and the tragic past, it just makes you want to help heal his wounded soul. All the girls gave a dreamy sigh, imagining themselves helping Sasuke heal, getting married, and having his babies. A disturbing image if there ever was one. On the other hand, girl number 4 continued, you have Naruto. He surprised us all, somehow going from dead last loser to sexy Adonis in a day. He has that super hot smile that makes you just melt inside, K dreamy sigh, those super dreamy blue eyes, K even bigger dreamy sigh, and, if you look at him, he looks exactly like Yandeme-sama, K fan girlish like squeal. I just don't know who to choose. I say we choose both. Everyone turned to look at fan girl number 1, or at least, the one tied for number 1. Ino Yamanaka stood up with a determined fire in her eyes. Not much had changed about her in recent years, the only difference besides growing a little taller was that she had grown her hair longer and was wearing it in a ponytail. Who's to say we have to choose one? Why can't we have both? She's right. We can. I say, let's do it. All of the girls seemed to agree with this, nodding their concurrent. All except one. How could you girls even think to betray Sasuke-kun like that? Sakura said harshly, scowling at all of the girls. Like Ino, the only change Sakura went through was growing her hair out. In fact, she had changed even less because Ino at the very least was starting to groan in ways a woman should. Have we not dedicated ourselves to Sasuke-kun? Have we not worked hard to get in his good graces? You girls should be ashamed of yourselves. Why? Asked Ino, frowning at her friend. It's not like Sasuke-kun ever actually gives us the time of day. Yeah, and he never smiles. And he's never said a kind word to any of us. I think he hates us. At this revelation the girls' mindset changed as someone suggested they switch targets to the newly minted Naruto-kun, a suggestion which everyone but Sakura seemed to agree on. As all of the girls began chattering excitedly about what they would need to change now that they were no longer the Sasuke-kun fan club, Sakura scowled even more and decided to leave these girls, lest she be infected by their stupidity. I can't believe those ungrateful, unfaithful sluts. That's right. How dare they do this to Sasuke-kun? Shinaro. Meanwhile, Naruto just shook his head, having heard every word those girls were saying thanks to his super-enhanced hearing. And he wasn't the only one. A little ways away Kiba had a slight scowl on his face. Why can't I get the girls to want to worship me like that Akamaru? He asked his little mean dog. Akamaru simply barked, though Kiba seemed to take comfort in whatever the little dog said. Seems you're quite popular now, Naruto, asked Akane. Truth was she was more amused than anything. The whole sheep mentality really shined at times like this. One minute someone's a loser, the next he's the hottest bachelor since Ryan Reynolds. 1. It was simply amazing how people could turn their opinion around like that. Still, she wasn't worried. Aside from the fact that these prepubescent little girls had nothing on her, she and Naruto shared something they never could. And she wasn't talking about how she lived inside of him. Naruto just sighed and sat there. To keep his mind off of the rapidly growing rabbit fangirls, he pulled out a scroll from his back pouch, unsheathed his blade and then unsealed the contents of the scroll. There was a puff of smoke and a very expensive sword cleaning kit appeared in front of him. Naruto uncorked the oil and poured some onto the cloth before he began to polish his sword. "Dobe, where did you get that sword?" Blinking at the familiar voice, Naruto looked up and saw Sasuke glaring at him. He looked back over to where Sasuke usually sat to brood and noticed that he wasn't there. Nodding to himself, he looked back at Sasuke and shrugged. "Why do you want to know?" he asked, even as he continued cleaning his blade. "I demand you give it to me." Naruto gave him a "what the fuck" look that went completely ignored. "I'm not giving you my sword, Sasuke," the blonde said, looking back down. "And it's pretty sick that you would even ask that. I didn't know you played for the other field." Snickers went all around at the not-so-subtle insult on Sasuke's sexual preference. It had actually been a debate among all the guys in class on whether or not the last Uchiha was gay, mainly because he had all those girls throwing themselves at him every day, and he did absolutely nothing. So far the bets on him being in the closet were 1 and 5, for the closet. Sasuke's scowl increased at the insult. "Give me your sword. If you want to play with a sword, use your own." More laughs emerged. Sasuke's face turned red in rage, but before he could do anything, someone else decided she had to defend her Sasuke-kun's honor. "Give Sasuke-kun your sword, Naruto no baka." Sakura shouted as she stomped up to Naruto, curling up her notactual of their sleeves. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How about, no?" Sakura growled as she got ready to pound him into the ground. "Naruto. Uzumaki, Naruto." Sakura swung her fist just as Naruto heard his name called. Then Sakura's fist smashed into his cheek. Only for Naruto to disappear in a puff of smoke. And Sasuke to go flying out, smashing his head into a wall and knocking him out cold. Everyone was so busy staring in shock at what happened that they completely missed Naruto entering the room for his ninjutsu exam. Naruto chuckled as he heard a scream of "Sasuke-kun" from outside. He saw both of the instructors looking at him, clearly saying, "What did you do?" However, Naruto just chuckled and shrugged as he walked in. "All right," Iruka said, snapping himself out of his stupor. He proceeded to explain the final part of the test. "Okay, Naruto, I want you to do a henge, and not that henge," he added the last part knowing of Naruto's most dangerous jutsu. A jutsu so powerful that it was known as the Kage/pervert killer. "Sure thing, sensei," Naruto said as he went through his hand seals in an exaggeratedly slow motion. He didn't need anyone to know he could do this jutsu without hand seals. Come to think of it, he didn't need them to know he could do it silently either. Henge no jutsu. A cloud of smoke enveloped Naruto, and Iruka waited on bated breath. When the smoke cleared, he sighed in relief, for there standing before him was a perfect replica of Kakashi Hatake, complete with little orange porno book, and perverted giggling. "Nice job, Naruto," Iruka said, "you can change back now." However, Kakashi just giggled and said, wait, this is the best part of the story." Flipping a page, Kakashi giggled again and Iruka face-palmed. "Naruto. Fine, ruin my fun." A puff of smoke later, a pouting Naruto appeared in Kakashi's place. "Now, give me a Kariwimi," said Iruka, and Naruto went through the necessary hand seals and shouted the name of the technique. There was another burst of smoke, and when it cleared, the 2 Chunin Academy instructors went wide-eyed with shock. For there standing before them was not a log, it was none other than Hiruzen Sarutobi himself. Said aging Hokage held the exact same book that Kakashi had been reading just a few seconds ago. A large blush was staining his cheeks, he was giggling perversely, and worst of all was the blood dripping down his nose. "Oh, Akiko-chan," Sarutobi held a hand to his face and giggled perversely, "You naughty girl." Hokage-sama?" asked Iruka in a slight stutter. Sarutobi's head snapped up so fast Iruka and Mizuki heard a loud crack. The Hokage's eyes widened and he looked around, it wasn't long before he realized he was not at his desk. Hell, he wasn't even in his office. Acting quickly, the old man hid his Ika between his robes and coughed in his hand. "Irukakin, might I ask how I got here?" The way he asked that made Iruka feel like if he answered wrongly something very bad would happen to him. He was thankfully saved from saying anything when the man disappeared in another puff of smoke and Naruto replaced the aging but still powerful Hokage. I meant to grab just his book but ended up grabbing him instead," Naruto said embarrassedly. Iruka shook his head and sat down. He really couldn't wait for this day to end. "Naruto, why don't you just finish up with the Bunshin no Jutsu so we can get this test over with?" Naruto nodded even as he pondered the question of, which clone jutsu should he choose. There were so many options after all, and each one had their merits. The Kage Bunshin, for instance, was a B-ranked kinjutsu and would show just how talented he was to be able to do something that most jonin have trouble doing. Of course, there was also the Rai Bunshin, lightning clone, which he was supremely thankful Itachi had copied down onto the scroll the man had given Naruto. There was also his own clone jutsu, the Kaze Bunshin, wind clone, then there was the Mizu Bunshin, water clone. So many options. He shook his head and decided not to show off. Placing his hand in the necessary hand seals he shouted, "Bunshin no Jutsu." There was a puff of smoke, a large puff of smoke. And when it cleared, jaws became unhinged, eyes went wide, as there standing before them was a veritable army of Bunshins. They filled every inch of the floor, the walls, the ceiling, there simply seemed to be no end to them. And then they burst into smoke, and just like that, only the real Naruto was standing there, a huge grin on his face. "So, how about that forehead protector, Iruka-sensei?" Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. The newly minted genin Naruto Uzumaki smiled as he made his way down the street, his forehead protector shining proudly in its place on his head. The blonde still couldn't help but chuckle as he remembered the way Iruka had just stared at him with a disbelieving expression while handing over his forehead protector. It was almost as good as seeing the shocked faces of everyone else when he came out with it. And now he was on his way to Ichiraku's ramen to celebrate. "Just remember to be home later tonight for your ascension," Akane reminded him. "Try not to lose track of time." "Don't worry, I won't," Naruto said, "and even if I do, you'll remind me." "If that's the way you feel, then maybe I shouldn't," Akane teased. "I feel more like your mother than your lover." "Then I feel totally sickened considering I've been sucking face with my mom this whole time." Naruto smirked when he heard a growl in his mind and knew that he had won this round. Naruto 1, Akane 265. He soon entered the small ramen stand that he had fallen in love with at the age of 6. Sitting down on his specially reserved bar stool, Naruto shouted, "Oi! Ajisen, how about you cook up some ramen for your favorite genin?" Tuchi Ichiraku, owner of Ichiraku's ramen, turned from where he was boiling some noodles to see an odd blonde sitting there. Though he was only odd for so long until the old ramen chef saw the familiar grin and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. He was very surprised to see the new changes his favorite customer had gone through, but he had seen stranger things and was able to just accept it as some weird Naruto quirk. It was after that acceptance that he noticed the boy's words and the new forehead protector. "Well, I'll be," Tucci said congenially, a large smile on his face. "So you finally graduated, huh?" "Of course," Naruto smirked. "You didn't think I would fail, did you?" Tucci just laughed before shouting into the back, "Hey, I am. Help me cook up some ramen for our favorite customer to celebrate his graduation." "Did someone say graduation?" came the call from the back as Ayam Ichiraku came out carrying a large box that she soon set down. Ayam had long brown hair, eyes of the same color and fair skin. She was wearing a white robe with the sleeves folded, some kind of dark blue apron with ribbon tied at the top and a bright white bandana. At 15 years of age, Naruto could honestly that Ayam had grown into a very pretty young woman. "Not as pretty as me, I hope." "She's pretty. You're so stunningly beautiful and sexy that I often find myself at a loss for words." "Charmer." "I try." "Hey, I am Ekin." Naruto greeted enthusiastically. Ayam blinked as she stared at who she perceived to be a new guy greeting her with such familiarity. A new guy who she also thought was ultra super hot. She blushed, heavily. Hello. Don't you recognize me, Ayam-eken? Asked Naruto, feeling somewhat mischievous as he saw her blush. When Ayam didn't seem to know who he was and just blushed even deeper, he said, "It's me. Naruto." "And Naruto-kun," she said, her eyes widening. By now her blush had spread not just to the whole of her face, but to her arms as well. "Yep," Naruto said with a grin, before he gained a concerned look. "Hey, are you alright? Your face is all red." Ayam felt her face begin to catch fire as the blonde jumped over the counter and walked up to her, putting a hand to her head, causing her to eep, in surprise and embarrassment. "Well, you don't have a fever as far as I can see." He leaned in closer, inhaling deeply. He modulated his voice to a slightly husky whisper as he leaned down next to her ear. "Did I ever tell you how delicious you smell? Just like ramen." Now, telling a girl that she smells nice was a semiok, decent compliment if not also somewhat creepy. Okay, very creepy. But telling a girl they smelled like ramen was not only creepy but would normally be taken as an insult. However, the combined might of Naruto's sudden hotness factor, combined with his hand on her head, being so close she could smell the scent that was uniquely Naruto, which oddly enough smelled like ramen and the forest, him leaning in her ear and whispering in a husky voice. All of that combined caused an irresistible combination that completely overpowered the terrible creepiness and insulting factor of the compliment. The reaction? Steam began to pour out of Ayam's ears as her face turned so red that for a second Naruto actually thought she caught on fire. Her eyes rolled up into the back of her head and her legs gave out on her as she crumpled to the floor, passed out with a trickle of blood running down her nose. Naruto just stared at her for a moment before looking at Tsuchi, who just looked supremely amused. "I think we need to get someone else to cook for me tonight, Ajisen." Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. "I cannot believe you just did that," Akane said, her voice halfway between exasperated and amused. "What?" Naruto asked defensively. She was wide open. "How could I not do that? And what's your poor Ayam-eken gonna think when she wakes up and realizes that her little brother isn't so little anymore?" asked Akane. "I don't know, but I doubt she'll become a fangirl," Naruto said, feeling a cold shiver run up his spine. He had a feeling those were going to be a problem from now on. Of course it had nothing to do with the way all those girls in class were eyeing him like he was a piece of meat, and talking about him, and creating the new Naruto-kun fan club while still in his presence. Nope, nothing at all. Anyways, I blame you for my talents. After all, you're the one who taught me everything I know, sensei. Whatever, Akane snorted, just get to the room where the clones set up the seals. Yes, mistress, Naruto commented jokingly, getting a light growl from the vixen sealed inside of him. He chuckled before walking towards a room on the second floor and opening it. The room had been cleared out this morning, and now held nothing in it. Nothing that could be considered furniture at least. What it did have were seals. Inside of the room, covering all parts of the floor, walls and ceiling were several sealing arrays. These were designs that Naruto had made to help him ease the process of his ascension to Hanyu. They would also keep anyone from hearing or feeling the process. He didn't want people to wonder why howls of pain were coming from the apartment, or why the place was leaking demonic energy like a fire hydrant. After all, it wouldn't do for people to think the Kyuubi was escaping. Stripping down to the bare essentials being absolutely nothing, Naruto lay down in the middle of the seals, a large circle with a pentagram seal array inside. "Are you ready?" asked Akane, wishing she could help him with this part, knowing it would be painful. "Yes," Naruto replied. "Get ready for the pain." It was not a steady build-up. The moment Akane's Yuki flooded the body and the apartment and activated the seal's absolute agony ripped through Naruto. It felt like every cell in his body was being torn to shreds, like being melted in a pool of acid, or having his nerve endings destroyed with a branding iron. Akane had told him that it would hurt, and he knew that it would, but being told something and finally feeling it. Those are two completely different things. He could vaguely hear Akane's voice in his head. Or was it outside of his head? He could barely even think straight, much less hear correctly. His vision was getting blurry, and the last thing he saw before he knew no more was a head of red hair. The first thing Naruto noticed when he woke up was the lack of pain. It wasn't just a lack of pain but the in general feeling that he felt better than he ever had at any previous point in his life. There was no ache, no molten, dripping lava or anything. He felt, for lack of a better word, great. It was then he began to notice the little things. Details like the fact that his senses were through the roof. He could feel everything going on around him, from the softness of the silken sheets that lay under his fingertips, to the soft, silky, skin-like texture of the pillows his head was resting on and the fingers currently running through his hair, lightly massaging his scalp. Then there was his weight. What? Opening his eyes, Naruto was given a sharp, crystal-clear image of Akane grinning down at him. That's when he realized his head was resting on her lap, and it was her fingers that were going through his hair. He also noticed another detail, one which was staring him in the face, given the way she was leaning over him. The fact that Akane was completely and utterly naked. Naruto blinked a few times as he stared at her breasts, subconsciously licking his lips. Now this is a sight I could get used to waking up to every day, he admitted, causing Akane to smile. Perhaps if you're lucky you will, the vixen quipped back. Naruto just yawned, stretching his arms over his head before bringing one back in to grab the hand Akane was using to run through his hair. He brought to his face and kissed her palm. I take it my ascension was a success. Akane smirked at him. What do you think? Naruto just sighed at her answer and made to sit up. He was going to walk over to the mirror when his hand was grabbed, halting his progress. Turning, he looked at Akane's, whose eyes were slightly lidded. Her breathing was starting to get a little heavy and the heady scent of honey filled the air. Akane? Asked Naruto curiously, wondering at the look. He had seen it before, though not this strongly. Remember what I said, Naruto? Akane breathed, her voice was soft, silk that caressed his ears and made the blonde shiver. He opened his mouth but didn't actually get a chance to say anything as the red-haired demoness continued. I said that once I turned you into a Hanyu, I wasn't waiting. With that, Akane yanked Naruto back, hard. The new Hanyu stumbled right on top of Akane, who pulled him down and gave him a searing kiss. The 10-tailed wolf. It took a while for them both to come down from their post-orgasmic high and regain their motor functions. When they did, Akane rolled over and cuddled herself into Naruto's side, while he wrapped her up with an arm and pulled her so that she was as close as possible. She threw a leg over his and did her best to tangle it with her mate so she could get comfortable. We are so doing that again, Akane decided, right before letting out a loud yawn. Naruto chuckled. I certainly won't argue with you there, but we should probably get some sleep first. Akane mumbled her response as her eyelids drooped close and her exhaustion caught up to her. Naruto stayed awake just a little bit longer so he could kiss her forehead before he too decided he had prolonged his date with the Sandman long enough and went to sleep. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. The next morning Naruto woke up to the feeling of his lover pressed against him. He sighed contentedly as he lay there. Last night he and Akane had woken up several more times and made love. Sometimes it was a fast-paced romp, and others it was slow and gentle. They had shared their love more times than he could count and he couldn't be happier. Thinking deep thoughts, Naruto looked down to see Akane staring up at him with a small smile. Her chin was resting lightly on his chest. Not really, he replied, I was thinking of going another round with you. Akane giggled a bit. I'm honestly not sure if I have another round in me, she admitted. You exhausted me last night, almost as an afterthought she added, and this morning. At least a dozen times if I recall, Naruto responded with a cheeky smile. Akane just lightly swatted his chest with no real malice behind it. They lay there for several more minutes before on some instinctual consent they both decided it was time to get out of bed. Seeing as he was now a Hanyu, Naruto made his way to the mirror so he could get a look at himself, and despite knowing he had likely changed, the amount of it surprised him. Naruto had grown nearly 1 foot, putting him from his original 5'1" to 6'1". His muscles, while still holding their sinewy build, were much broader than before to match his new height. He looked older as well, at least 6 years or so, making him match the 18-year-old image that was projected in his mindscape. He still looked generally the same, but there were some major differences. For one, his hair had grown longer. It still looked the same in the front, with the fringe and the 2 jaw-length bangs on either side of his face, but the back was now down to his waist. The whisker marks he still there, but had faded some, which was a tad surprising as he expected them to get thicker if anything. Another major change were his eyes. They were still blue, though they now held a slight steel gray added to their tone. His pupils were slitted, and to top it off there was a ring of silver around his iris. It was an odd change, but Naruto decided that he liked it. Finally, his biggest change, and the one that shocked him the most. The first was the fact that his hair now had black streaks added to its golden blonde color. They varied in thickness, but there were several that ran down the length of his hair. But that was small in comparison to the 2 ears that had cropped up on his head. They were not the fox ears that he had been expecting. Though they were similar to fox ears, there were a few minor differences between thickness and size. They looked more canine than anything. The final finish were the tails that had sprouted from his tailbone. Again, they were not fox tails, waving around behind him on their own accord, and much less fluffy than fox tails, were 10 canine-ish tails swishing behind him. "Hey, Akane-kan," Naruto said, "how come I'm not a fox?" He found it odd that it was the only question he could think to ask for the moment, but discarded that thought since he was curious and his mind could not come up with any theories on its own. Akane shrugged. "I don't know, you're the only Hanyu that's ever been made due to a bijou. Most are born between a union of a demon and a human." She tapped her chin. "It's possible that your form is matched to the greatest aspect of your personality, but that's just a theory." The redhead smiled as she came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his neck. She set her head on his shoulder and said, "Still, I rather like what you are now. I've never seen an ukami demon before, and I've met just about every kind of demonic entity there is. So that makes you unique." "So that's what I am," Naruto said as he leaned his head against hers. "An ukami, huh? A wolf?" "Yep," Akane said. It was here, staring into the mirror, that Naruto finally realized something he had not even bothered to notice last night. "Akane," he said again, "are we in my room?" Akane's answer was for her smile to turn into a grin. Naruto shifted and turned around in her arms as she kept a hold of him. He stared at her with an intensity that made her shiver as it reminded her of their love-making last night. "How?" he asked, a simple question that had no easy answer. Akane shook her head. "I don't know. 1 minute I was pumping you full of my yuki, and the next, I'm being thrown out of the seal and across the room." "So the seal sucked you out," Naruto murmured, his face thoughtful. His eyes focused on her again. "Can you show me your stomach?" Knowing what he wanted, Akane let go of him and channeled yuki into her stomach. Naruto leaned down as he saw a seal spread across her tummy. It looked a lot like the Shiki Fujin, but with one major difference. The seal was inverted. "Interesting," Naruto murmured as he placed a hand on her stomach. He felt Akane's sharp intake of breath but ignored her growing arousal for the moment. There were so many questions that he now needed answers to. How had Akane gotten sucked out of the seal? Why was her Shiki Fujin inverted? Did it hold any significance to their situation? Or was it always like that? He knew he would need to study the Shiki Fujin in detail to come up with the answer, and that meant talking to the Hokage at some point. As Naruto was just about to pull away, he noticed something else about Akane. Her tails were all gone. Looking into her eyes, Naruto asked, "Are you all right?" Akane smiled as she knew what he was talking about. "I feel a lot weaker than I was, but I'm fine." When she saw that he didn't look convinced, she laughed and pulled him up into a kiss. I'm fine, really. I may not have my tails, but I still have 4 times more Yuki than your Kage has chakra. Besides, I'll gain my tails back in a little under 3 years, so don't worry. Naruto nodded and at the word tails remembered something else he wanted to know. Why do I have 10 tails? I thought I would only get 9. Your chakra reserves were already so high that when it mixed with my Yuki you had too much power to hold in. Akane looked at his tails. I suspect that your body created an extra tail to contain your power. She smirked at him. Your control is going to be shit, right? At this Naruto groaned as he realized he was going to have to work on chakra control all over again. Yuki control, whatever. Relax, Akane said, don't make such a big deal out of it, you big baby. It will be easy, all you'll need to do is make a couple thousand Kage Bunshin and we can get your control back up there in a week. That's good I suppose, Naruto said. As he calmed down he realized they had one other problem. We're going to need to buy you some clothes and get me some new ones. Why? Akane asked with a grin, I could always just wear yours. She laughed at the look he gave her, which was a mix between turned on and pleading. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Naruto and Akane found themselves walking down the streets of Konoha. It was around midday and the two of them had used their transformation abilities to change into 12-year-old version of themselves. Naruto looked like he did before his ascension. Though, Naruto noticed with some amusement that Akane had neglected to change her breast size, making them look nearly twice as big than they really were. As the two of them walked down the street, with Akane latched to his arm, pressing it between her breasts. They ended up drawing quite the crowd. A lot men and women were gawking at them, well, maybe not so much him as Akane. He was sure that part of the reason for this was because his vixen was wearing some of his clothes, his sleepwear to be precise. A large t-shirt and a pair of his boxers. The blonde Hanyu was positive that the whole reason she had done this was to get a reaction out of the people around them. At least if the large cat ate the canary grin on her face was anything to go by. They walked into Higarashi's weapon shop, the store that Naruto had become familiar with and the only one that Naruto knew, through his conversations as Erasure, that the man who owned it would actually let him shop there. Kaizuki didn't seem to be in at the moment, however the blonde did see his daughter standing by the register with a bored look on her face. Tenten Higurashi had brown eyes and long brown hair which she wore in Chinese-style buns, one either side of her head. Her forehead protector was worn around her head underneath her fringe. She also had on a pink sleeveless blouse and dark green pants. Naruto thought she looked kind of cute. She's definitely got that cute panda thing going for her with that hair, Akane chimed in his mind, another ability they had discovered. Even though she was out of the seal, they still held a mental connection with each other. It was an ability Naruto felt would prove useful. Hello, Naruto said after walking over to the register with Akane. He was amused when Tenten jumped in surprise, finding it funny that she hadn't even sensed their presence. Hello, she said cheerfully, her face held a light blush at being caught napping. Welcome to Higurashi Weapons Store, where we sell all of your shinobi needs. How can I help you? After her sales pitch she got a good look at the pair, to be more specific she got an eye full of the clothes Akane was wearing. A large blush spread over her face as she turned her head, though her eyes occasionally wandered to them both. Wow! Akane said in excitement, she even does the sales greeting. I wonder if she can do any other tricks. Tenten's jaw dropped, but before she could say anything Naruto stepped in, yo. We were actually hoping you could get us 4 standard sets of kunai, shuriken, ninja wire and smoke pellets while Akane-kan and I get some clothes. Of course. Tenten said, doing her best not to look at the dark orange, male boxers Akane had on. Will you also be needing explosive notes? No, Naruto said as he and his mate went over to the clothing selection, I can make those myself. Tenten just blinked in surprise at the statement before shrugging and went about getting their supplies. The whiskered blonde was quick to pick out his clothes, they were essentially what he was wearing in his transformation, only in his size. Other than that, he just watched as Akane flitted about. She would grab a piece of clothing and examine it for a moment, before shaking her head on moving on. It was almost an hour later that his mate had finally decided to head towards the changing room. At some point during Akane's clothing search, Naruto had gone to the weapons section, thus he didn't see her when she walked into the changing room, nor when she came out. The redhead grinned as she walked behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around her neck, her face nuzzling against his. "Want to see my new outfit?" she said in that same voice that she had used last night. "I have a feeling you'll like it." Naruto grinned. "Alright, let's see." He turned around and his jaw promptly became unhinged. Akane's outfit, simply put, was the epitome of sexuality. She was wearing a red sleeveless shirt, one that exposed more midriff than anything he had ever seen, showing off her tight, toned stomach and lithe waist. It reminded him of a sports bra because it stopped just below her breasts. Underneath that she was wearing a meshnet shirt. Her shorts stopped a little above mid-thigh and were extremely tight on her, allowing Naruto to see her delicious and perfectly tight and round ass. Both shirt and shorts were in crimson red coloring. She was wearing a pair of fingerless gloves, white gloves, shin guards, red high-heeled shinobi sandals and a white vest similar to a Chunin flak jacket but with only 2 pockets in front. Hers was left unzipped, allowing Naruto to see the fabric of her shirt strain against her bust. "Well?" Akane grinned as she spun around. She already knew what he thought, but it was still fun to play along. "What do you think?" "It looks..." Naruto shook his head and tried his best to regain his bearings. "Honestly, I think many men are going to die thanks to that outfit." "Oh." Akane smiled at him and urged him to continue. "The few men that don't die via nosebleed are going to die by my hand simply for seeing you in that," he finished, grinning as he pulled her to him. Akane's expression matched his and soon the two were making out without each other, complete with full tongue-on-tongue action. They were only interrupted by a squeak. Both Naruto and Akane turned to the source to see Tenten, a massive blush on her face as she tried to cover up with her hands. The two demons noted with amusement that she would still peek through to look at them. "Could you two please not do that?" "Why?" asked Akane, walking up to the girl's face and leaning in until they were nose to nose. "Do you want to join us?" "Well, if you ask nicely, I may consider letting you share the experience." "Story of the 10-tailed wolf, that was cruel what you did to poor Tenten back there," Naruto commented as they left the store, another Naruto behind them carrying shopping bags. "What?" Akane smiled, humming a small tune. "I think it did her some good. She struck me as the type who spends all her time training. You know, too much time being one of the guys, and absolutely no time being a woman. This will help." "And how does pulling the poor girl into a full-on lip lock help?" asked Naruto amused. "Don't get me wrong, it was pretty hot seeing you suck face with another chick, but I'm not sure how it helps." Akane placed a finger on her chin and looked thoughtful. "Well, maybe it will help her come out of the closet." "Right," Naruto snorted. "Well, if she does turn out to play for the same team, she'll be hard-pressed to find a girl that can top your kiss." Akane didn't comment, merely content to grin like a fox. Halfway through their journey home, an ANBU wearing a cat mask appeared in front of them from within a swirl of leaves. "Uzumaki-san," the voice said, sounding distinctly male, "Hokage-sama has requested your presence." "Really?" asked Naruto. He looked over at Akane who shrugged. "Tell Ajisen we'll be there as soon as we drop off our clothes." He didn't give the ANBU a chance to speak as he wrapped an arm around Akane and he, his mate, and his clone all disappeared in their own swirl of leaves, shocking the ANBU. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Sarutobi stared out of the window as he puffed on his pipe, blowing out smoke rings as he found himself deep in thought. He had just received a report yesterday on the reports for the academy graduates, giving him the ranking for all those that had passed. Most of the report was exactly how he expected it to be. One person's was not. Naruto Uzumaki, the boy had been the dead last in the academy for the past 6 years, failed twice and remained on the bottom rung, just barely passing after that. This same Naruto Uzumaki also just blew the entire record for the Genin exams out of the water, a perfect score. So perfect in fact that there were 2 people whose records matched his. Itachi Uchiha, and Minato Namikaze. Now Sarutobi was not stupid, he may not be as spry as he once was, and he couldn't deny that he was blinded to certain things thanks to old age and other facets of life. But he was still the professor, the Kami no Shinobi, god of shinobi, and one of the smartest ninja in Konoha. When he saw the report of Naruto's perfect score he knew what was going on. Naruto had played them, all of them. It was like he had set up one big massive prank within all the smaller ones that he had done. All of those pranks that Sarutobi had never been able to uncover, all of those break-ins at the ANBU HQ and the compounds of some of Konoha's most powerful clans, all of it had been Naruto's doing. But for what purpose? And why? Sarutobi had theories to these answers, but he wanted them confirmed. He had sent Tenzo out 10 minutes ago to fetch Naruto, the man had returned in 5 and had given him some interesting news. Just then the door slammed open and a familiar if somewhat deeper voice called out, "Hey, Ajisen, you called." Sarutobi got a good look at Naruto and the companion Tenzo had mentioned. Even though he had received a report the boy's physical changes were surprising, he was a dead ringer for his father, were it not for the whisker mark Sarutobi might actually believe the boy was Minato. The girl on the other hand was a beauty, with a body that was so perfect that when you combined with her choice of clothes would make many people think sexy and deadly. With long crimson hair that spilled across her shoulder blades down to her waist, 2 bangs framing a perfect face and deep red eyes that were even more exotic than those of Kurenai Yuhi, it was a wonder the old Hokage didn't die of a nosebleed. He let none of his varying emotions play on his face as he smiled at the young man. "Ah, Naruto-kun. Come in and take a seat," he gestured to a chair before eyeing the girl, an act which did not go unnoticed by either of them. "It's okay Ajisen, she's with me," Naruto said, "and we don't keep secrets from each other." Sarutobi raised an eyebrow at the curious statement, especially since he had no clue who she was. "Then, your friend is welcome to take a seat too," he said, sensing there was a connection between the two that may provide the answers he sought. At the very least he could learn of this girl, whom he had never seen in Konoha before. He watched in some form of amusement and some surprise as the redhead ignored his gesture for the other chair in front of his desk, instead opting to sit in Naruto's lap. Even more shocking was the way the blonde automatically wrapped his arms securely around her waist. It wasn't just that he had done it that was surprising, but the familiarity in which the act was done. As a shinobi, ninja were always supposed to look underneath the underneath, as the old adage went. Seeing how they acted showed Sarutobi that this act was done with regularity. Curious. "I suppose I should start by introducing my friend," Naruto said, "Akane-kan, this is Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage and leader of the village, but I just called him Ajisen." "Ajisen, this is Akane, my mate." "You're what?" "My mate," Naruto repeated, as in girlfriend, wife, lover, whatever you want to call her. "Personally, I just call her my vixen." "You always know how to say the sweetest things," Narukan, Akane cooed and Sarutobi, along with the ANBU hiding in the room shivered at the tone, a sound that was so sensual and laden with sexual overtones it should be illegal. "Yes, well," Sarutobi coughed to get back on track, "it's nice to meet you Akane-san. However, I am curious, I have never seen you in the village before. How is it that you know Naruto-kun?" "Oh, I've been around," Akane replied airily, "you probably just never noticed." "I see," Sarutobi frowned, "and may I ask when you two met?" "It must have been about, 7 years ago I think," Naruto replied, tapping his chin in thought. 7, Sarutobi muttered as he tried to remember when these two could have met 7 years ago. He couldn't honestly think of any time they could have met. In fact the only incident he even remembered with Naruto was Maybe you should send out the two ABNU hiding in the corner and the one on the windowsill out of the room, Naruto suggested at seeing the old man's eyes widen. Sarutobi and all the three ANBU in the room were all shocked, only one thought was going through their head at that moment. How did he know where the ANBU/we were hiding? In the end it did not matter, the Hokage did not want any possible information leaks and he felt that what was about to be said in here would be extremely important. He raised a hand and the three ANBU appeared as if out of thin air. One by one they walked out of the door and when the last one left, Sarutobi channeled some chakra into a seal on his desk. There, now we can talk in private, he said. Hold on just a minute Ajisen, Naruto stood up, much to Akane's whining protest. He just chuckled at her, causing the redhead to stick her tongue out at him. The interaction between the two of them would have been amusing to Sarutobi if wasn't already on alert. He watched as Naruto made his way to his side of the desk and reached under it, ripping off a seal. A listening device seal. There, Naruto burnt the seal, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say the seal spontaneously combusted because Sarutobi had not seen Naruto use a jutsu of any kind. Now we can talk in private, the blonde sat back down and Akane was quick to reclaim her spot. How did you find that seal? Asked Sarutobi, even as he cursed for having not found that seal before. He had a good feeling about who it belonged to, and that meant this person had been spying on him for knew how long. I'm just awesome like that, Naruto replied, causing Sarutobi to sweat drop and Akane to giggle. Anyways, that's not really what you want to talk about, is it? No, Sarutobi said, trying to get over the fact that this Naruto was, while similar in disposition to the one he had always known, also fundamentally different. The Sandaime could already discern from his eyes that the blonde before him was intelligent, the way he sat spoke of confidence and a trace of arrogance, he was much different than what Sarutobi was used to. Turning to Naruto's companion the Sandaime studied the beauty before him, taking in her red eyes and mischievous smile. After a few seconds of thorough observation he asked, "You're the Kyuubi, aren't you?" "Wow, you were right Narrakan," Akane said as she turned her grin to her mate, "he is pretty smart." "I told you he'd figure it out if we gave him subtle hints," Naruto said. "Well, he didn't get any of the other subtle hints you gave him and the rest of the villagers these past 7 years. That's because I didn't give any." Ahem, Sarutobi coughed into his hand, bringing the two other occupants' attention to his. "While I find all of this somewhat amusing, perhaps you would be willing to shed light on this situation, like how you're out of the seal." He didn't even bother to make a passing attempt at denying that the Kyuubi had been sealed. If this woman, odd as it might seem, really was the Kyuubi, then Naruto already knew everything. He was strangely calm as Naruto and Kyuubi told him of the events that had transpired. Honestly, he felt that he should be shaking in his boots at being in the presence of the being, woman, that had nearly destroyed Konoha, yet he felt nothing but an odd detachment as he listened to the pair. They told him about their meeting in his mindscape, to how Akane as she was known, began to train him. The persona they had crafted to make Naruto seem like a harmless prankster, while at the same time training him in ninja aspects like stealth, traps, reconnaissance and intelligence gathering, and losing a tail. It truly amazed Sarutobi to realize just how utterly fooled he and everyone else in Konoha had been. There were a few things Naruto and Akane kept to themselves, things they didn't feel he needed to know like their more tender moments, their time in Kiri and the blonde's Erasure persona. However, everything else was for the most part laid bare. They told him about Naruto's first kill, how after that he had continued going on bandit raids and had even faced a few missing men. Sarutobi had been worried when he had heard the young boy had already killed, but both Naruto and Akane had told him not to and that the redhead had helped him through it. Throughout the entire conversation Sarutobi felt that the situation he was in had a surreal quality to it. Mostly because he was apparently having an intelligent conversation with a being who had been considered a demon of mass hate and malevolence. Of course that was only if everything they were telling him were lies. By the time the pair had finished Hiruzen had gone through 3 packs of tobacco and could still feel a headache coming. He leaned back in his seat and rubbed his forehead, "So let me get this straight. He looked at Akane, are a 2,000-year-old demon who was actually created by the fox god Inari to serve Kami with a task she had given you and the other Bijou. After which she made you the guardian of Hai no Kuni and you served as its protector since then. You were even here at the founding of Konoha and were the one who granted Hashirima Senju permission to make this village. Is that about right? Pretty much, Akane said. There were a lot of little things that happened in between but those were the main points. Also, I wasn't exactly created. Like you, I was born. I had been sent to serve Inari-sama as I was a member of the Kitsune clan. During that time I became his second-in-command and when a threat appeared on Earth, Inari-sama gave me my 9 tails Nai along with the 8 other Bijou who were chosen as avatars of our gods were sent down to Earth to complete our task. Other than that, you got the gist of it. May I ask what task you and the other Bijou had been sent here to complete? Certainly, Akane started. Our task was to defeat a being who I guess you could call the first Bijou. Interested, Sarutobi leaned forward as the redhead began her tale. This being was actually the combined creation of both Yami-sama and Kami-sama, a being whose body was actually made from their power. They had been working on creating a being whom they could send down to watch over Kami-sama's creations. Aren't Yami and Kami gods of opposites? Asked Sarutobi. Goddesses, Akane corrected. Yami-sama and Kami-sama are both female, sisters as well, but you are right about them being opposites. Kami-sama is a being of light and creation, while Yami-sama is darkness and death. I thought the Shinigami was the god of death. Please, Akane snorted, the Shinigami is merely an avatar of Yami-sama. It is his job to ferry the souls of the departed to the next plane of existence, heaven or hell, depending on what kind of person you were in life. Despite being called a death god by you humans, he is actually no such thing. Now where was I? Oh yes. So the 2 goddess sisters had created this being, who was supposed to be a perfect blend of light and dark, life and death, and sent it to watch over Earth. For a while the being did as told, it watched over Kami's creations, helping them, guiding them. However, something happened. You see, light and dark were never actually made to blend, they are polar opposites and therefore dangerous when combined. Neither she nor Naruto mentioned Naruto's ability to use the powers of both light and dark, since they still didn't even know how he could use them. What happened? Asked Sarutobi. It was impossible for the old man not to be interested in the story. What Akane was telling him was a piece of history that had been long since lost to the sands of time, something only known to her and a few others. The being went insane, its power corrupted it, and in the end it became a monster. The first demon, if you will, Akane said. In fact, the term demon was first coined from this being due to how much death and destruction it had caused. And what was this being? It was called Yamata no Orochi, Akane said, an 8-headed, 8-tailed hydra, whose power actually dwarfed my own. A being more powerful than you? Asked Sarutobi, feeling a shudder run through him at the thought of a creature more powerful than the one before him. Akane grinned at him, as if she sensed his unease. In a manner of speaking, its reserves were actually larger than mine. However, my power is different from others. How so? I draw my power from nature, Akane said. I draw my power from the world itself, and therefore, as long as nature exists, my power is technically unlimited. But we are getting off topic. In the end, myself and the other Bijou clashed with the Yamata no Orochi for several hundred years. And we almost lost. All of the other Bijou were taken out of the fight early, and if it weren't for my ability to draw power from the earth, I would have lost too. Then, something none of us could have anticipated happened. One man, one human man, defeated the Yamata no Orochi after I had weakened it. He had done this, by sealing the creature away into the very core of this world, where even now it resides, sleeping. Who was the man who sealed the Yamata no Orochi? His name was Kenshiro Kamimura, Akane said. However, you would know him as the Rikudo Sennin. The man who gave us ninjutsu? Asked Sarutobi. Indeed. Sarutobi leaned back in his seat and thoughtfully tapped his pipe against the desk. He had a feeling there was more than they were telling him, but at the moment he felt that the information he received was enough. Tell me, there was just one more thing he had to know: if you are the guardian of Hai no Kuni and Konoha, why did you attack us? I didn't, Akane sighed, sensing her depression. Naruto pulled her closer against him. She smiled as she leaned back in his arms, kissing him on the cheek before resting her head against his. Sarutobi waited patiently, figuring she would tell him when she was ready. As I told Narrakan once, every decade or so I travel out of my home and see how Hai no Kuni is doing. I had been in Konoha for 6 months before my attack. A frown marred her face as she began to speak. The thing is, I don't remember attacking Konoha at all. One minute I was in my hotel room, and had just gotten ready for bed, then I heard a voice. I turned around and the last thing I saw were 3 glowing red eyes, and then nothing. Afterwards I woke up, sealed inside Narrakan. It sounds like you were being controlled, Sarutobi murmured thoughtfully. Truth was that thought terrified him. Anyone who could control the Kyuubi, Akane, was dangerous. It's possible, Akane admitted slowly, not really liking that she just admitted someone else could control her actions. It's very rare, but there are some demons who have the ability to control the minds of others. However, for someone to control me they would have to have power on the same level as the gods themselves. That particular piece of information would have caused Sarutobi to swallow his own pipe had he still been smoking. Someone with the power of a god. Essentially, Akane said, you have to understand that of the 9, I am the most powerful bijou created, only the gods are above my level of power. So for someone to be capable of controlling me, especially to such a degree that my mind has no conscious thoughts, has to have powers equal to that of a god. Do you know anyone who could have such power? Akane shook her head. That's the thing. No one should have that much power, even the Yamata no Orochi didn't have that much power. I can't think of anyone, or anything, that should have the kind of strength to control me. I see. Sarutobi closed his eyes as he let his thoughts move on to other matters. Like what they should do now. Well, there is nothing we can do about your attack, or whoever controlled you. However, I would like to ask what you plan to do now. I go wherever Narrakan goes, Akane said. She really didn't care what they did so long as he was with her. I was actually hoping you could let her sign on as a shinobi. Naruto said, getting both Sarutobi and Akane's attention. As a bijou you know she's powerful, she also knows me better than anyone else, having trained me after all. We would make a good team. Sarutobi let that thought enter his mind as he examined it, searching for any angles he could see that could prove to be its undoing. The only real problem he could see with letting Akane become a shinobi was what would happen should people find out who she was. However, the benefits of having the most powerful demon in existence as a member of Konoha's military far outweighed any potential downside. It is a good idea, he said at last. If you are the guardian of Hai no Kuni it would be easier for you to do your job. If I'm going to be a shinobi under you then there are several stipulations I want added, Akane interrupted. Name them, said Sarutobi. First and foremost, I will only work on a team with Narrakan. Easily accomplished, he even had someone already in mind to be their sensei. It may take some convincing, and Kakashi wouldn't like that his request for Naruto was denied. But this would benefit Konoha in the long run. Second, I want Sennin-level travel rights through Hai no Kuni and its allied nations. That will be a little difficult to procure, Sarutobi said, but at seeing her look at it, I can still get you your travel rights, but it will take some time. That's fine, we don't need them right away, Akane said. Finally, when Narrakan reaches Jonin, we would like for you to make a village announcement on his heritage. Sarutobi coughed several times in surprise. You know. We both know Ajisen, Naruto said, speaking up for the first time since he had greeted the Sandame. I've known since I was 8. Naruto, what I did was. I'm not mad, Naruto interrupted, given how you thought I was I can understand your reluctance to tell me. That Naruto would have shouted his heritage to the whole world, consequences be damned. And I know the problems that knowledge of my heritage could cause. Akane informed me about the consequences that would happen should IWA learn who my parents were. I am pleased to see you're taking everything so well, Sarutobi said. You really are more mature than most people give you credit for. Of course, Naruto grinned. Most people don't look past the surface of what they see, or only end up seeing what they want to see. True, Sarutobi nodded. He turned back to Akane. Are there any other stipulations towards your agreement to join the village? No, Akane shook her head, those are it. Very well, I will get to work on all of the things you have requested. Sarutobi leafed through several sheets before grabbing one specific one and writing on it. He handed it to Akane. That is simply a form for you to fill out. Give it to me when you finish and then make sure you and Naruto get your shinobi's license. Got it, Naruto said as Akane grabbed the slip of paper and read it over. Is there anything else you need from us, Ajisen? No, Naruto-kun, I think that's all for now. There was still more he wanted to ask, but honestly, he had more than enough information that it would take time for the Sandaime to process it all. In that case we'll be going. Come on Akane-kan. Naruto and Akane stood up, nodded and gave a cheeky wave respectively, before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving the Sandaime to ponder all that he had learned. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. This is Raven Sage signing off.